let's get started here. A couple minutes after the hour. So we're going to talk about the PaintCare program as it's going to be launching in Vermont and Rhode Island in the next couple months, next couple days for Vermont. I'm John Hurd. I'm the Vermont Program Manager, and Laura Panciera is the Connecticut and Rhode Island Program Manager. Feel free to contact us at any time with any questions, comments. All right, so we've got at least one on from Rhode Island. We also have our PaintCare hotline, both email and toll-free numbers. And those are for either the stores and the general public to call with any questions, site locators, all that kind of good stuff. Should also let you know that we are recording this in a couple different ways. We've had trouble getting some of the previous webinars to actually record, so we're trying this a couple different ways so we can have a record of this webinar for the future. So we're going to talk about who PaintCare is, what the paint stewardship law requires, what products fall under the program, the responsibility and role of retailers, and retail and consumer outreach materials that we can provide. So we'll start with PaintCare. Who's PaintCare? We're a 501c3. We represent the paint manufacturers. So paint manufacturers are on our board of directors. We're actually spun off from the American Coatings Association, which is also governed by a board of architectural paint manufacturers. We were established in 2009 specifically to run the paint product stewardship programs. Why are we doing this with paint? Every year, the annual sales of paint in the United States are 650 to 700 million gallons a year. The estimate is 10% of that goes unused. That's leaving 70-odd million gallons of unused paint, adding to the collections in everybody's basements and garages every year. Until now, both Vermont and Rhode Island and in most of the country, the only times you could get rid of paint would be at a household hazardous waste event. Those generally only take the oil-based paints, and they're very expensive and run right off taxpayer dollars. So some of the household hazardous waste facilities came to talk to the paint manufacturers about 10 years ago, said that they were spending millions of dollars of taxpayer money to get rid of the paint manufacturers' products, and what can we do about this? Paint manufacturers decided that they would work on this and draft a model legislation before somebody else told them how they had to do it, which is the way the electronics worked, and it's been a mess. So paint manufacturers set up PaintCare, drafted the legislation, started recruiting states, started in Oregon, California, Connecticut. This year we're going to launch Vermont, Rhode Island, Minnesota later in the year, and Maine is going to be launching early next year. So the key parts of the law are that it requires participation of all manufacturers, because we want to have a level playing field where everybody, the fees that are being assessed by everybody on everybody's behalf, so there's nobody's getting a free ride on this. It's industry designed and operated, which is where PaintCare comes in. We're running it, and we are running it on behalf of the manufacturers. And it allows for sustainable financing through the per can assessment fee. So some of the key parts, it requires a collection infrastructure. A big part of this is retail stores. So the stores that are selling the paint are also going to be taking it back. Also partnering with municipal household hazardous waste programs who have traditionally taken the paints, and waste transfer stations that want to provide this service for their residents. Both programs require public outreach and education. We need to make sure people know about this, or they're not going to bring their paint back. And we take care of this paint in an environmentally responsible way. So these are some examples of what we take and what we don't take in the program. So basically, the program collects architectural coatings, latex and oil-based paint, stains, and varnishes. That covers about 95% of what goes into our PaintCare boxes. We do it in 5-gallon smaller containers, all latex and oil-based, all primers, sealers, and stains, shellacs, lacquers, and varnishes, and all waterproofers. The big things we don't take are the thinners and solvents and the aerosol cans. So those are the two that people are going to want to try to get rid of with paint, but they don't fit in the program at this point. Others are industrial maintenance products, OEM paints, auto marine, and craft paints, glues, epoxies, adhesives, caulks, tars, resins, all that kind of stuff that's actually not paint, and paint additives, colorants, tints, etc. So what is required of the stores? The stores have to pass through the fee. So the way this works is once the program starts, so in Vermont, May 1st, any invoice for paint purchased after May 1st by a Vermont store will have, right on the invoice from the manufacturer, there will be a paint recovery fee line. So the store pays that fee up front when they're buying paint in from the manufacturer, and then they pass it. They have the responsibility to pass that through to the customer. However, they don't have to account for it, collect it, and return it. The manufacturers are doing that part of it. Retailers have a responsibility to sell only registered brands. There are lists on our website of the different brands that are registered for different states. It's good to check and make sure everything you're selling is on those lists. Both states require that consumers or that stores that sell paint give consumers information about the program, and they can voluntarily be a paint drop-off site. And why would a store want to be a paint drop-off site? Bottom line is this can provide foot traffic. People who may not necessarily have been purchasing paint at your store are coming back to your store to bring back their paint that they may have purchased elsewhere, but that gives you the opportunity to turn them around as customers. So these are the proposed fees for both Vermont and Rhode Island. Half pints and less are small sample sizes, and little tiny ones are no fee. More than half a pint to less than a gallon is 35 cents. Gallons are 75 cents. And more than 1 gallon to 5 gallons at $1.60. So this is on the container size. So if you've got a 5-gallon pail with 2 gallons in it, it's $1.60. If it's a 1-gallon can that's half full, it's 75 cents. And so the idea is to get an idea of what the budget for the program costs, divide it out by the number of containers sold, and try to come up with a number. The biggest part of the budget is going to be paint transportation and recycling. And there's outreach and education, things like webinars, insurance, legal fees, staffing, administration, all the other overhead that goes along with anything. So if you've got questions on what has the fee at the point of sale, all of your invoices will be on, or the fee will be on the invoices. So anything that you're paying the fee on should have the fee on it. Anything that you're not paying the fee on should not have the fee on it. And you can check the manufacturer and brand lists that are on our website. You do not have to show the fee on the customer receipt. Most stores that I've talked to choose to show the fee right on there as a paint care recovery fee or paint recycling fee. The wording's up to you. Or you can roll it into the price if you want to make it more invisible. The fee is taxable, so there's sales tax on the fee. And the word deposit should never, ever be used anywhere near this program because people do not get their 75 cents back when they bring back their can of paint. So the fee doesn't apply to existing inventory. So in Vermont, everything that's in the store on May 1, the fee starts being applied to. So this gives the stores a little bit of a buffer when they start having to pay those fees and their first invoices coming in. We talked about the fees are based on container size, and the fee is per container. There's the famous example of somebody wants a 5-gallon pail. You have 5 singles. You don't have any 5s. You have to sell them 5 singles. You have to assess the 75 cents on each one. You can't pretend it was a 5-gallon pail and put the $1.60 on it. So you have to pass the fee on to the consumers, yep. And so this is part of the level playing field. Also, you're being charged this by the manufacturer, so if you're not passing it on to the customer, it's coming right out of your bottom line. So there are a lot of brands out there. We found a few new ones as we've gone through Vermont. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a few new ones hiding in Rhode Island. So yeah, go to our website. There are now tabs for all the individual states, and the lists of registered products are to be found in those tabs. There's oversight in both states from the Agency of Natural Resources in Vermont and the Department of Environmental Management in Rhode Island. It's great how every state has a different acronym for us to remember. Yeah, and if you don't see a manufacturer or a brand that's on your shelves, please let us know, and we'll talk to them and make sure they get registered. So PaintCare has a pretty large variety of pretty high quality consumer information. We've got nice brochures, we've got information for trade painters, we've got mini cards that can go into every sale of paint that you make. And I know in Vermont, every store has gotten these materials. I would assume that Rhode Island either has or will be having them very, very soon. And again, PaintCare provides all of this material up front. This is all coming out of that upfront fee. There's no cost for any of this to the stores. We also have a nice variety of this same material in poster-sized forms and window clings, and we can custom make stuff if needed. There's also translations of all of this material, or many of these materials, into a bunch of different languages. Some examples of our posters and information sheets. And the consumer brochures and the mini cards. Mini card basically directs people back to our website so they can find a site to recycle that paint. So maybe it's that mini card's taped to a can of paint that's been in the basement for 5 years now. They can grab the mini card, surf our site, and find your store to bring it back to.
John, just for the Rhode Island stores, we are in the process of mailing, hopefully this week and next week. The Rhode Island stores should be seeing these.
Excellent. So becoming a drop-off site is voluntary. We provide on-site training, collection containers, transportation of those containers. I don't see the spill kits on here, but it does come with a 5-gallon pails type spill kit. We recycle or dispose of all of the paints and things that end up in that container. We provide all the posters and consumer education materials. We will promote your site. We do advertising on television, on radio, in newspapers. I believe there are billboards in Connecticut right now. Won't have any of those in Vermont, but you might have some in Rhode Island. And it looks like in Rhode Island, Laura's going to be helping and or filling out the forms for the DEM to get those forms all properly filled out.
Yep. I will contact anybody who wants to be a drop-off site, get the pertinent information, and we will send those into DEM on behalf of any of the retailers.
So as a paint drop-off site, your responsibility is to identify products so that you're taking paint products and not other things. Basic key there is it needs to be a paint container, so it's a paint can with a paint label on it and a lid on it. They need to be stored properly, which basically means put it in the box as soon as you get it. Schedule a pickup when the box gets full, and maintain some basic records. In order to become a paint drop-off site, there's this retailer interest form. It's on the website. It's under both state tabs. Let us know. We'll get you into the database. We'll get you trained up. get a contract to you, and start collecting paint. I've got about 30 stores that are going to be launching in Vermont this week to start collecting paint. They've gone through this process. So again, here's our contact information. I'm in Vermont at jhurd@paint.org, and Laura's in Connecticut at lpanciera@paint.org. And feel free to either call or send customers to our hotline with any other random questions. Laura, do you have any other details on Rhode Island that you'd like to share? And this is a good time if anybody has further questions to ask as well.
Well, best I can tell you with Rhode Island is the mailings will be going out hopefully by the end of this week to all the retailers. I'm in the process of scheduling training for the Rhode Island sites that have already sent me letters of interest, and we are projected to launch Rhode Island on June 1st of this year.
It's coming up fast now.
Mm-hmm.
We're into May. We've got a question. Is there any cost for being a drop-off site? There is not. There is no cost, but there's no reimbursement. But all the costs for this program are covered by that upfront fee that's charged on every gallon of paint sold. So that covers all the materials, all the outreach materials, all the collection materials, the boxes, the transportation, training, all that's covered by that upfront cost. Are the states doing anything to communicate the recycling fees to consumers? It's really on PaintCare to be communicating this more than it is on the state. It is a state mandate. It's a program that was established by legislation, but it's really being run by the manufacturers through PaintCare. So it is really the PaintCare's job to be communicating these fees to the consumers. That's where I showed earlier the trade painter fact sheet, and that's a very key one because those are the people who are going to be paying a lot of these fees, so they need to know up front and ahead of time so that they can start adding that to into their bidding process.
What we did in Connecticut is we did very minimal advertising to avoid anybody being overwhelmed by people bringing in paint. We slowly phase in advertising and outreach so nobody gets basically slammed with paint right from the get-go. Are we doing that in Vermont too, John?
Yeah, that's exactly what we've done. We've done a couple of press releases in Vermont, and we've been talking a lot to the paint stores. We have not communicated very much with the consumers. We have a one-day event coming up this weekend. That has been advertised in the newspaper and has had a lot more promotion than the actual launch of the program. Got a question. Is everyone required to charge the fees to the consumer? Well, are there any penalties for not charging? The penalties for not charging is that the store is paying these fees to the manufacturer. So your penalty is that you're now eating that fee out of your store's product, coming right out of your profit. Could you have issues with the sales tax? Yeah, you probably could have issues with the sales tax. That would have to come up to the tax department, but you would technically that fee is on that price, that gallon of paint. So if you're selling the gallon of paint without the fee, you should still be reporting that sales tax back to the state. I've got the Vermont website up right now in front of us. So we've got the program brochures, got links to information for retailers, information for trade painters, the drop-off site interest form. That's the brochure again. Our general posters and order forms to get more point-of-sale materials to the stores. Some of the oversight from the product steward, the law itself, if you want to read through the language there, and A&R's links. Some more of our fact sheets for non-retail. The list of manufacturers and brands that are registered. The remitter agreements are for the manufacturers. And this is our overall plan, which makes good bedtime reading. Let's switch over to Rhode Island. And very similar. We've got letters to retailers, fact sheets for retailers, fact sheet for painters, also available in Portuguese. If you're interested in becoming a drop-off site, here's the interest form, and Laura will come give you a visit and train you up to get ready to be a site. Here's some slides from webinars from earlier in the year. And then we've got the law, the actual law itself, links to the DEM, press release, manufacturers and brands, and the remitter agreements, as well as the plan.
John, go over to Locator.
Go over to Site Locator. So up here in the corner of the website, there's the Site Locator. And so we've got 3 states that are live right now, Oregon, California, and Connecticut. I'm going to enter a Connecticut zip code.
06518.
You want 06518?
Yep.
Sounds good. And let's see. Oh, you wanted that because you got a whole lot of retail drop-off sites there, huh? So
no, it shows you the closest 50.
Yeah, that's a lot of sites. So you enter your zip code and it pops up all of the sites. And so, well, let's see. See if we can find a true value since we're on a true value webinar here.
Right there, Bethlehem.
There we go. So as you can see, so this is on the website for everybody to find. Here's your store name, your address, your contact number, and a link to your website, your hours, any restrictions. All of our outreach materials say 5 gallons per customer per visit. This is to protect the store from getting about 200-gallon drop-off at 5 minutes before closing, overfilling your bins. You can take that 5 gallons, say thank you, come back again tomorrow with 5 more. And any other details and restrictions that the store might want to add. Well, I've got a question of, are the big box stores going to be drop-off sites? So far in the program, the big box stores, the Home Depots and Lowe's and Walmarts are not drop-off sites. They do not have the trained personnel who care enough to take good care of these bins, and they do not want to give the floor space to them. So this is an opportunity for the small stores to offer another service that those big stores just can't compete with.
Notice on the locator too, any transfer stations, we put, restrictions. We'll do anything that any of the towns, any of the stores want. And you guys should have seen the co-branded True Value materials too in your stores, hopefully.
Yeah, and this is something really that transfer stations and waste districts and so forth can do that a store really can't, is to do a restriction by area because they're funded by specific areas. But again, this is customizable to your store.
And I believe the True Value Members Online website has a lot of information pertaining to the programs, dealing with your POS systems, because I know you have, I think you guys have a couple different POS materials or POS systems you use. And I know there's been a lot of information on the True Value Members Only website that's been very helpful to the stores.
Just wanted to show that here's part of Vermont, and right now we don't have any stores up and live. They're going to go up live tomorrow as we get boxes and get everybody fully set up. But right now we have the hazardous waste days and so forth that are upcoming or on, and that should be the same for Rhode Island right now. And we are partnering with the household hazardous waste collections and collectors to take their paint, which will save these hazardous waste facilities and programs quite a bit of money, because paint makes up more than half by volume, and if you add in latex, which this program takes latex and oil, that's going to be a huge volume that we're going to pay the transportation and disposal on. Give a couple more minutes if people have any more questions, and we can call this good if we want. What happens to the paint that's collected? We send it to recyclers. Most of them are out in Ohio is where the stuff from New England is going to. They recycle 80 to 90% of the latex, and most of that goes right back into paint, so paint to paint recycling. It's one of the reasons that we like to collect stuff in the original can and it stays in the can, because then when the recyclers get it, they can dump out a white can and a yellow can and a green can into different bins and recycle it. So they take it by color and then batch it together to make new colors. Oil-based tends to be burned for fuel because that's about all it's good for. And the really dried out and nasty latex, some of it gets used for landfill daily cover. Some of it gets landfilled straight up. There's a company in California that's making little decorative rocks out of some of it. So there are some reuse for it, but most of the really nasty stuff will get landfilled. And yeah, this is it's part of the legislation, and part of the reason that states like to work with us is that we are mandated to try to handle this paint environmentally correctly. All right, give another second for another question. Otherwise, thank you all for coming and listening in. We are recording this in a couple ways, so we should be able to get a copy of this webinar out in the next couple days for your files and for reference. And thank you for joining us this morning.